The story began with a girl who had shouted at a boy to go on and throw a fit, saying that watching him squirm was the best entertainment. She had added that she honestly could not stand the thought of him being her childhood friend. At that moment, he had felt something snap inside him. Takaya Shiki Rua had not been a normal girl. She had been one of the most popular idols of the time and the granddaughter of Takayashiki Taizo, the chairman of the Taikon Group, Japan's ruling corporate giant. Her wealth and influence had been far beyond those of any ordinary person, making her a real-life princess. In contrast, he had been Suzuki Kazuma, an unremarkable, gloomy boy who did not even have friends, let alone a girlfriend. He had been the textbook definition of a loner, and if he had any defining trait, it was simply being the childhood friend of Takaya Shiki Rua. He had spent his whole life as Rua's shadow, but he had never wanted to be special like her. He had only wished to have friends and a girlfriend like any normal person. He had once told Rua about his feelings, but her reply had been to ask if he was stupid and to call him a gloomy loser who should know his place. She had told him that his only worth was being her childhood friend, and that alone had already used up all the fortune of his life. She had told him to engrave that into his head. Know your place had been the words Rua had repeated to him since childhood, and they had weighed on him like a curse. Yet, even then, he had not been able to stop longing for a normal life. By the spring of his first year in high school, this desire had still remained. One day, while he had been sitting at his study table reading a book, his phone had beeped with a message from Rua. She had asked if he could meet her at the station at 3 p.m. that day, saying that she was going to karaoke with Aya-chan and the others, and asking if he wanted to come along. After reading the message, he had thought about Aya-chan, Hiragi Ayaka, that flashy girl, and had realized that he had never even spoken to her. He had wondered why she was inviting him. Then, Rua had messaged again, reminding him that he had once said he wanted friends and a girlfriend, and telling him that the best way to achieve that was to join an elite group like theirs. She had urged him to take that first step. He had thought it was his chance to change. He had dressed as well as he could, and had even gathered the courage to visit a hairdresser. After that, he had gone to the VIP club. When he had opened the door, he had told himself that he would become a new version of himself in order to change. The moment he had stepped into the room, everyone had burst into laughter. Someone had exclaimed loudly, and soon they had all begun mocking him. One person had remarked in disbelief that he had really shown up, while another had called him gross. Someone else had laughed, saying it was hilarious, and pointing out that he had even cut his hair. A girl had commented in surprise that he smelled like he had just come out of a hair salon, and another had added, laughing, that he was even wearing a jacket. Rua had then told the others not to laugh, claiming he had really tried his best, before bursting into laughter herself. At that moment, Kazu had realized the truth. It had all been a setup. Suddenly, Rua had walked up to him and had asked what was wrong, pointing out that he was just standing there. She had urged him to cry already, adding that she had bet 10,000 yen that he would end up bawling. She had then told him to answer one thing. Kazu had asked if he had done something wrong, and what he had done to deserve this. She had replied that it was obvious, and pointing at him sharply, had told him it was because he was her slave. She had ordered him to struggle in frustration and put on a show for her, adding that she honestly could not stand the thought of him being her childhood friend. Hearing that, he had stood frozen in shock. It had felt as if something inside him had broken, and he had realized it must have been the sound of a bond shattering. He had then told her that he felt the same and suggested that they cut ties. She had immediately started shouting, demanding to know what he thought he was saying and how a loser like him could dare talk back to her. He had replied that she had been the one complaining in the first place. Enraged, she had yelled at him not to mess with her and had called him an idiot. She had declared that she had every right to hate him, but he had no right to hate her. He had thought that this was peak Japanism, that a brat like her could be a top idol, and that the world had gone mad. In that moment, he had slammed his hand hard on the table, placing some money there. The impact had made the table crack slightly, and as he had walked out of the room, he had said that it was settled. Everyone had been stunned. One person had scoffed that it was lame and told him to stop trying to act cool. Another had assured Rua-chan that she did not need to worry about him. Suddenly, a girl had noticed the table and had asked if it was seriously broken. The group had begun discussing it in disbelief. Someone had said there was no way and had wondered if he had really done it. Another had argued that it was impossible, insisting it must have been cracked beforehand. One more person had said that no normal man could break a table with his bare hands, and another had agreed. Then a boy had started teasing and had called out to Rua-chan. She, in frustration, had declared that she would never forgive him for breaking off their friendship. After that, Suzuki Kazuma had been standing on the road. For some reason, he had felt completely refreshed, as if the world itself were glowing. He had wondered why he had let her control him for so long, and had decided that he would rather face high school alone than sell his soul to a beast wearing human skin. He had thought that, from that moment onward, he would no longer live as her shadow. He was finally free. That night, the chairman of the Teikai group and director of the Teikai Academy, Takayashiki Taizo, had been in his office. Suddenly, Rua had burst in, shouting for her grandfather. He had greeted her with, "Oh, Rua," and she had immediately begun complaining, telling him to listen because Kazu had been mean to her that day, and had even said he was breaking off their friendship. A lady who had been standing there, Rua's cousin, Takayashiki Kikura, had asked if that was true. Rua had replied to her cousin, calling her Kurachi, that Kazu had just gotten bored. She had then said she could not believe it, as Kazu had never once opposed her until that moment. Kikura had suggested that maybe Rua had said some nasty things to Kazu. Rua had grown angry and denied it, but then, after thinking for a moment, she had admitted she had only said things like he was her slave or that it sucked being his childhood friend. That was all. Kikura had remarked that it was still pretty bad. Taizo had agreed, telling Rua that it was only natural for Kazuma to be upset. Rua had protested, insisting it was not true, claiming she had only been teasing him a teensy bit. She had then said angrily that the moment Kazu had started high school, he had suddenly wanted friends and a girlfriend, and she had asked if that was not ridiculous. Kikura had replied that it was actually quite normal to want to make more friends. Rua had shouted in disagreement, saying that Kazu already had her, the world's cutest princess Rua, always by his side, and yet the idea that he would want to get close to anyone else, especially another girl, was unthinkable. She had then argued that it was perfectly fine for her to tease him just a little, because in the entire world, she was the one who understood him the most, because she loved him. Then her grandfather had said that it was Kazuma's fault. Kikura had thought to herself that there was the doting grandparent. She had told him that if they truly wanted to make up, Rua should be the one to apologize. Rua had refused outright, saying there was no way, and had reminded Kurachi that she was Kazu's mentor. She had told her to figure something out and make things right, to make Kazu apologize to the adorable Rua-chan, say "I really love you, Rua," and then kiss her. Kikura, smiling slightly, had asked if a kiss was what Rua wanted. She had then remarked to her uncle that he intended to make Kazu-kun Rua-chan's husband, didn't he? He had replied that of course he did, explaining that this was why he had arranged for her to be Kazu's mentor, to teach him martial arts and the art of leadership. He had added that Rua liked him too, and that a talent like his was one of a kind. Kikura had agreed, saying he was absolutely right and that she had never seen anyone like Kazu. Ever since elementary school, his grades had always been straight threes. He had purposely scored average to fit in, and all of it had been part of his training to become Rua's shadow. If he were to stop holding back, she had said, then forget getting straight fives. The whole school, the entire country, and even the world itself would be shaken. And if that were not enough, he was ridiculously popular with girls. She had said she could not even count how many they had had to transfer out because they liked him, and thanks to that, he did not even realize he was popular. Rua had laughed and said that of course that was her Kazu after all. Her grandfather had declared that he was a worthy candidate to take over the Teikai group. Kikura had said that, now that he had cut ties with Rua-chan, Kazuma had no reason to hold himself back anymore, and whether it was athletics, academics, or even romance, things might spiral out of control. The next morning, in the middle of the school veranda, there had been a table and bench set up with a poster placed on it. On the poster, it had been written that their seat had apparently been reset that day, followed by "1 lolol." Many students had been passing by, and one of them had asked what it was, adding that apparently some Suzuki guy had actually gone against Princess Rua. Another had said he must have been a dumbass. When Kazu had seen his desk and chair with that poster, he had immediately understood the situation. He had had a vague idea before, but now he had realized that his childhood friend, that ultra-wealthy heiress and top idol, was nothing more than the absolute worst pig of a human being. He had considered that in such a case, there were two options. The first was to return the desk and chair to their proper place and attend class without making a fuss, which was what most students would have done if faced with the same situation. The second was to run to the staff room, but he had dismissed that immediately, knowing it was not even an option for him because this was Teikai Academy. Teikai Academy, he had reflected, existed to train S-class talent and make Teikai the world's #1. It was publicly known as an S-class academy, where those who excelled in academics, sports, or the arts were exempt from tuition and dormitory fees. Students from across the nation were recruited under a special scholarship system. Those with exceptional talent belonged to the upper rank, while the common masses were designated as lower rank. This caste system governed the academy, sometimes from behind the scenes and sometimes in plain sight. The most influential person in Teikai had been the girl Takayashiki Rua, also known as Princess Rua. On top of that, the chairman of the school had been her grandfather. Naturally, the teachers had been very sweet toward Rua. Kazu had reasoned that if he brought his complaint to the staff room, the outcome would be obvious. In that case, he had asked himself if he should choose option 1, put everything back in place and remain silent in class. But he had decided no. Since he had made up his mind to live alone, there was a third alternative. Then he had opened his pen and, while writing on the poster, had said to himself that it should be good enough. He had written that, with this, he would be studying on his own, and since it was an order from Takayashiki-san, they should count him as present, signing it as Suzuki Kazuma. Soon, other students had come and read the note. One had said in disbelief that there was no way and had asked if it was for real, while another had wondered if they were not afraid of Princess Rua. He had thought it would be troublesome if someone found out, which meant he needed to move. Heading toward the stairs, he had said to himself that there it was. The underground library. It was a place most students and even some teachers did not know about. Since he had been a regular visitor, a senior from the library committee had once let him in on the secret. He had decided he would simply waste time there until class was over. He had reflected that he had always wanted to live a normal life, but now that he had gone against her, he doubted he would be able to make any friends or find a girlfriend. If that was the case, he had resolved to leave quietly on his own. Suddenly, when he had opened the library door, he had seen a girl changing her clothes. The girl, startled at the sight of him, had shouted in shock. At that moment, he had no idea about the story that was about to begin. While he had been seeking an ordinary life, he would instead find himself surrounded by extraordinary girls, in days far from peaceful. Kazu had apologized for earlier and had introduced himself as Suzuki Kazuma from Class 1 of the first year. The girl, looking shy, had replied that she was Minato Amane from Class 2, adding that she should be the one apologizing for yelling like that. Kazu had then stepped out through the door, telling her she did not need to apologize, as he should have knocked first. He had asked if a library committee senpai had told her about that place as well. She had replied that they had. Kazu had thought that it made sense, as there was no guarantee he was the only one they had told. After that, she had put on her clothes and opened the door, telling him he could come in now and apologizing for taking so long. Kazu had asked why she was in gym clothes and, more importantly, why she had been changing there in the first place. She had gulped in a troubled manner and explained that she had just been looking for a place to practice her singing and dancing. She had added that she remembered a senpai once telling her about that place, and that although she might not look like it, she was actually a seiyuu. She had mentioned that she had a duet concert coming up. Kazu had remarked that she was in the performing arts track and noted that the school was full of artists, including his former childhood friend. It had seemed to him that the girl was one of them, one of the special students and the pride of the high school. He had then asked if she had brought the full-body mirror there by herself, commenting on her dedication. Suddenly, he had paused and asked if she had skipped class that day. Looking fearful and flinching, she had explained that she had come in at her usual time that morning but had found her desk and chair placed in the hallway, along with a note that said there was no place for her there. He had thought that it sounded very familiar and had wondered if that was the reason she had been crying earlier. Suddenly, his phone had lit up with notifications. Numerous messages from Rua. In them, she had asked where he had gone and had complained that he was taking forever. She had demanded to know if he had watched her video the day before, adding that everyone was roasting him in the comments. She had threatened that if she mentioned his name in her next video, he had better watch out for her fans. She had then ordered him to get back to class and apologize on his knees, saying that if he did, she might forgive him. After reading those messages, he had blocked her, the screen confirming that Rua had been blocked. Then he had put his mobile in his pocket and had asked Amane why someone would do something like that to her, wondering if she was not one of the special students. She had been shocked and had replied that she certainly was not, explaining that she was a total failure as a seiyuu and that there was nothing remarkable about her face or voice. He had told her that her bangs were hiding her face, but her voice was really cute, like the sound of a bell, soft and easy to listen to. She had begun blushing and had insisted that could not be true, saying there were far better idols and seiyuu in the industry than her, such as Takayashiki Rua. Compared to her, she had added, she was nothing. He had asked if she really thought so, and she had admitted that she did. She had then revealed that she believed the bullying had started right after it was announced she would be doing a duet with Takayashiki-san. Just the previous day, she had seen many comments online telling people not to pair her with someone who would drag them down. What rude fans, he had thought, though he supposed pigs felt attracted to other pigs. Kazu had then explained that what he really wanted to know was how someone like her had ended up doing a duet with that pig. She had asked what he meant by pig, and he had apologized, admitting he had said that out loud and clarifying that he had been talking about Takayashiki Rua. She had been shocked and had warned him to be careful with his words, saying that speaking badly of Takayashiki-san meant danger there. He had pointed out that there was no one else around at the moment, but she had insisted it was still risky. She had explained that it had been the agency's decision, as Rua-chan and she were in the same agency and attended the same high school. The agency had said she was perfect to support Rua-chan on stage. Kazu had thought that was a pretty harsh way to put it. Still, if they were talking about the same agency as Runa, then it had to be Teikai Music. They would do anything to push Rua-chan to the top, especially since Rua-chan's grandfather was the president of its parent company. He had reasoned that the whole desk bullying incident was probably Rua-chan's doing too. She must have been angry about the agency's decision. Even so, treating Minato-san like that had felt deeply unfair. She had said that she did not mind being just a supporter, not after they had given her at least one chance. That was why she had wanted to do everything she could, so she would not drag Rua down. He had understood, and had asked if that was why she was practicing there. When she had confirmed, he had told her that was actually pretty cool of her. Then he had extended his hand and had asked if she would let him help her with that. He had explained that all he could offer was the perspective of a total newbie, but if she did not mind, he would like to try. After a moment, she had smiled, taken his hand, and agreed, thanking him warmly and calling him Suzuki-kun. He had wondered for a moment if it was just him or if Minato-san was actually cuter than that pig. It had been break time, and as Kazu had walked along the veranda, he had thought about how Minato-san had been rehearsing all morning. He had decided he should bring her some water so she would not get dehydrated. Suddenly, Rua had shouted loudly at him, demanding he hold it right there and asking where he had been. She had scolded him for skipping class, speaking as if she owned the place. Kazu had thought to himself that here she came again. Rua had continued aggressively, asking if he was just going to keep ignoring her and reminding him that she had not forgotten he had blocked her. She had told him he did not get to ignore the great Rua-sama, not in this life or the next. She had then teased that perhaps her beauty was too much for him, claiming he was too shy to even look her in the eye. Kazu had ignored her and had kept walking away, but she had yelled after him again, telling him to wait. Then a boy had grabbed him from behind and had sneered, calling him a gloomy loser and asking if he thought he could just leave, ordering him to show some respect to Rua-chan. Kazu had wondered if that boy was not a special student in the baseball club and had thought that stalking Rua must have become his new sport. If the boy had so much free time, Kazu had felt he should use it to train instead. He could even learn a thing or two from Minato-san. Then the boy had asked aggressively what was with Kazu's look and whether he had a problem, demanding that he say something. When Kazu had stayed silent, the boy had tried to punch him, but the blow had missed completely. The boy had thought he had landed the hit, but had realized he had not felt a thing and could not understand when Kazu had gotten behind him. Everyone around had begun laughing and murmuring among themselves, wondering if Asano had really punched him, suggesting it either had not hurt or had missed entirely. They had mocked him, calling him a loser and questioning if Asano had always been that weak. Kazu had then asked what was wrong with Asano and had suggested he should hit the gym a bit more. Shocked, Asano had demanded to know what Kazu had just said. Suddenly, Rua had shouted for them to stop. Asano, taken aback, had addressed her respectfully as Your Highness. Rua had ordered everyone to listen, declaring that she was the only one allowed to mess with Kazu. She had told them they could tease him only when she gave permission, and only as much as she allowed. Pointing at Asano, she had warned him never to lay a hand on Kazu without her consent, and had told him to know his place, calling him scum. The crowd had gone silent, and Asano had replied politely with a "Yes, ma'am." Kazu had then called out to Rua, and she had brightened immediately, almost shining with excitement, asking what it was. He had told her that if she thought that made her look cool, she was mistaken. He had explained firmly that no one in the world had the right to bully or be bullied, especially not when it came to him, and had warned her not to mess with him again. Leaving her standing there, he had walked away. After that, she had collapsed and sat on the ground, muttering only that Then a girl had come over and asked if Princess Rua was okay, while a boy nearby had asked what Kazu's deal was. Rua, still dazed, had replied that he was so cool. 1 week later, while Minato Amane had been practicing, she had been dancing when her leg had given way, and she had suddenly fallen. Just then, Kazu had appeared and caught her in his arms. He had asked if she was okay, and she had responded by calling him Suzuki-kun, blushing as she had thanked him again. Kazu had told her not to mention it and had said they had to make sure she did not get hurt before the big show. Minato had remarked that he always seemed to show up right when she was about to fall, calling it amazing. He had asked if it was really that amazing, saying it was nothing special, but she had insisted that it certainly was. She had told him he did not know how much it had meant to her, all the support he had given her, and all the times he had protected her until then. That was why she had wanted to say it again. "Thank you so much, Suzuki-kun." Kazu had replied that it was the first time anyone had ever said that to him. He had told her she was welcome, though it really had not been a big deal. Then he had suggested that when she stepped back to center stage, it might be easier if she simply did not turn, so she would not lose her balance as much. Minato had hesitated and said that if she did not do that, she would not stand out on stage. He had asked if that was really how it worked, then said excitedly that he had an idea. What if she jumped back instead? That way, she could stay in the spotlight. She had told him it was impossible, explaining that it was at least 5 meters from her side to the center. He had asked if she really thought so, then had tried to show her, saying that if she did it like this and put a bit of power into her knees, he had slid and landed sitting beautifully. He had told her it was pretty easy, asking if she had seen. She had been amazed but had told him it definitely was not easy, asking how he had even done that. She had said it was like he had jumped off a trampoline and that normal people could not do such a thing. Calling him Suzuki-kun, she had guessed he must have top grades in PE. He had denied it, saying he had been scoring 35 in strength in every subject since elementary school. He had then mentioned that another thing she might want to fix was her posture. She had said she had figured he would say that, as people always told her she slouched like a cat, and her chore instructor often scolded her for it. He had suggested she lean into it instead, then had shown her some postures and told her to do it like this, imitating a meow meow. She had hesitated but had repeated, "Me? Meow?" He had told her she got it and to now do it while dancing. She had begun dancing and singing meow meow meow, and he had thought she looked too cute. She had told him she thought she had gotten the rhythm down, and he had agreed, saying she had done great, and that now they just needed to tell the costume designer to prepare cat ears and a tail for her. She had agreed at first, but then had quickly apologized, saying she could not do that for the duo performance. When he had asked why not, she had explained that it would not match well with Rua-san and that she was just her support girl after all. He had then asked if she was okay with that. She had replied that she was, explaining that singing and dancing had never been her real job anyway, and that the performance she had wanted him to watch was actually her acting practice. Since she was a seiyuu, she had said that voicing anime characters was all she truly wanted to do. that was why she had worked so hard all this time, so that it could someday help her in her voice acting career. He had told her that he understood. Kazu had thought to himself that she was a positive girl, but it had not been only that. She had looked so lively and bright when she had talked about voice acting, and he had truly felt how much she loved it. He had murmured that he would also like to, but had trailed off. She had asked what he had meant, and he had replied that it was nothing, explaining that he did not have anything like that, no dreams or goals. She had asked if there had been nothing he wanted to be in the future, and he had told her he was not sure, adding that all he had ever thought about was just being normal. He had said he did not need to be special, just someone ordinary he could be proud of. She had told him that was fine, and that he could be as normal as he wanted to be, assuring him she was certain of that. He had thanked her, calling her Minato-san. She had then mentioned that there had been something she wanted to ask him. After hesitating, she had admitted that she had heard he and Rua-san had a fight recently and had asked if it had been because of her. He had answered that it had not been her fault. She had leaned on him and asked if, since he and Rua-san had been childhood friends, she might be getting in the way between them. He had told her not even close, explaining that they were not childhood friends anymore, so she did not need to worry about Rua. She had acknowledged this, saying she understood. Then she had addressed him as Suzu Kazuma-kun, and after he had responded, had begun to ask if he would, perhaps, like to. Before she could finish, Rua had arrived, opened the door, and shouted at them, demanding to know what Minato had been doing alone with Kazu in a place like that. Startled, Minato had suddenly panicked and, without thinking, had hugged Kazu tightly, exclaiming in shock that it was Rua-san. After seeing Kazu and Minato together, Rua had started shouting at them. She had said that she had heard Kazu was there, so she had come to check it out, but then had demanded to know what was going on and why he had been with that trash voice actress. She had mocked the girl, saying she was not even remotely popular, and had insulted her as literal crap, stupid, and an idiot. Kazu had thought to himself, wondering if Rua had been in elementary school or something. Rua had then said that the reason Kazu had been vanishing right after school lately was because he had been meeting that girl, questioning why he would go out of his way to be with someone so gloomy, ugly, and hopeless. She had cried loudly, saying she hated it and demanding to know why Kazu had not been next to her, but instead next to that trash girl. Minato had then told Rua that it had all been her fault and that Kazuma-kun had only been helping her. Rua, looking at her angrily, had repeated, "Kazuma-kun," and had told her to know her place. Minato had agreed, correcting her by saying, "Suzuki-kun." Rua had mocked her again, saying that getting close to Kazu had been a million years too soon for her, calling her a forehead curtain weirdo and claiming she was probably ugly under those bangs. She had continued shouting, asking if Minato had even shown what was under those bangs to Kazu yet. When Minato had reacted with confusion, Rua had said that had been close and had ordered her to quickly wrap her hair up with duct tape. Suddenly, Kazu had told Rua to cut it out, reminding her that she was supposed to be in the same group as Minato. Rua had responded that that was right, but had added that Minato was just a support role anyway, and was someone like her. Kazu had countered that the so-called sidekick had trained like crazy every single day just to hold her own, and had told Rua not to get in her way. Rua had asked in disbelief why Kazu was taking Minato's side, reminding him that he had been her childhood friend, and questioning why he would never take her side. He had replied that he stood by people who worked hard and had added that they were not childhood friends anymore, asking if she had forgotten what he had told her earlier. Rua had then asked what was wrong with him, wondering if he was still mad about the other day, claiming it had just been a joke. He had responded seriously, questioning if she really thought it had been a joke. Stepping closer to her face, he had asked how many people she had hurt with her so-called jokes. He had reminded her that she was in high school now and should know the difference between what was okay and what was not. Finally, he had told her that she was the one who needed to learn her place. After that, Kazu had begun to move away and had told Minato that they should go. She had agreed. Then suddenly, Rua had started shouting that Kazu was an idiot, claiming that she was way cuter than that girl and that there was no way she would lose to some trash-tier voice actress like her. After some time, Minato had apologized to Kazu, saying it had been her fault that Rua had gotten angry. He had told her that she did not need to apologize and had added that she had just given him a great idea. When Minato had asked what idea, he had replied that if they could poke at Rua's oversized pride just right, they could totally throw her off her game, and they would call it the Amane dance operation. She had become excited. After that, they had gone to a cafe where Minato had taken out a packet of black cat pens. She had asked Suzuki what it was, and he had told her that he had just picked it up over there. He had then asked if Minato had a YouTube channel, and she had replied that she did, adding shorts off. He had told her to wear that and upload yesterday's cat dance, saying he was sure it would catch people's attention. She had hesitated, saying that her channel barely had any subscribers, and she did not think it would get much attention. He had told her that he would help her with that part too, and that besides, with her dance, he was sure it would be fine, asking her to trust him. She had replied that she understood. Then Kazu had asked if, when she recorded the video, she would consider lifting her bangs, telling her that she was seriously cute and that it would be a waste to keep hiding her face. She had been shocked and had explained that she was just scared of people looking at her and that she could not relax unless she was behind her bangs. She had admitted that she thought she needed to fix that and had apologized. Kazu had said he understood and had asked if her agency had ever said anything about it. She had replied that they had not, at least not until the group had disbanded, and that it suited the support role image more this way. He had remarked that it figured, and that she should have just gone solo from the start. Trembling, she had said that had apparently been the plan, and that the group had just been for publicity and would disband after one CD release. He had agreed, and had commented that showbiz was dirty. She had informed him that their agency had been basically owned by Rua-san's grandfather, and that, when it came to popularity or looks, Rua had been way out of her league. She had then asked if going up against someone like Rua-san had really been okay. Suzuki-kun had then started thinking that Minato-san's lack of confidence must have been caused by her involvement in that world, where people feared losing their position and tried to suppress anything that stood out. He had reflected that there were many like that, whether in school or in showbiz, and that she had been surrounded by such people, so it had been no wonder she had lost her confidence. Suddenly, she had told him that he had been childhood friends with Rua-san, and that Rua had liked him a lot, adding that it had been amazing. He had replied that it had not really been amazing, just annoying, and had told her that she could just call him Kazuma. She had been shocked, and then had happily said that she would call him Kazuma-kun, and if it had been okay, she would be happy if he called her Amane. He had agreed and said, "Got it, Amane-chan." She had then taken that packet of black cat pins and had told him that she would do her best for the video shoot. After that, she had seemed to think of something, had randomly lowered her head onto the table and had said, "No." Kazuma had then asked her if something had been wrong. The scene had then shifted to a YouTube channel named Voice Actress Amane-chan, which had had 41 subscribers and 5 comments. There had been a video in which she had introduced herself, saying that she had been Minato Amane, a voice actress, and that day she would be dancing to her original Amane dance. She had said she would be really happy if the viewers had watched until the end, and had then announced she would begin. After that, she had started singing and dancing in the video. When she had stopped, she had said that the song she had just danced to would be performed live at an event that Sunday, and if the viewers had been free, they should come check it out. She had also asked them to subscribe to her channel, but just then she had said her battery had died. After watching the video, Kazuma had thought she was cute and had commented that it had been nice. When he had scrolled through the comments, he had noticed there had been some hate comments, but also genuine viewers. He had thought he would check out her channel too, not because he had been into it, but only for information gathering. He had then checked Rua's YouTube channel, Rua Heim Strikes Back, which had had 1.1 million subscribers and 2,142 comments. In one video, Rua had been shouting, "Suzu-Kazuma, Suzuki-Kazuma," along with insults like idiot, stupid, and crap thrower, and questioning why he had not noticed how amazing she had been. Suddenly, she had controlled herself, changed her voice, and then, being cute and cheerful, had greeted her audience by saying it had been her, Rua Hime, their one and only Rua. She had explained that what they had just seen had been something called emotional expression acting, and had asked if they had been surprised, adding that she had been channeling some recent frustrations to express anger. With a playful tee-hee, she had wondered if she should go all in on acting too. She had then signed off as their super motivated Rua Heim, telling viewers to keep cheering for her and had promised to see them soon. After watching that video, Kazuma had wondered what it even had been. Then he had said that if that had been how she had wanted to play it, he would crush her without holding back. That night, Rua's video as a popular idol had ranked up tens of thousands of views. In contrast, Amane-chan's video had sat at just around 50 views. The gap in recognition had been undeniable, yet the cuteness of the neon dance had been the real deal. He had thought that if people had just seen it, it would definitely spread, and what he had needed to do was help make that happen. He had then opened his system and had started writing a comment saying that the video had been great, and asking people to give it a watch and, if they liked it, to share it. After that, he had shared a YouTube channel link. After seeing the positive replies, he had thought that he, Kazuma Suzuki, had been an introvert. He had considered himself gloomy and without friends, but online it had been a different story. In a certain mobile game, he had even been the wise leader of a pretty big clan, so he had had a bit of a network. A few days later, the scene had shifted to the school, where Minato had been checking her channel. She had come to Kazuma excitedly and had said that she could not believe it had gotten so many views in just 3 days and had asked what on earth he had done. He had replied that he had helped spread it around a little, but if the video itself had not been great, there had been no way it would have gone viral. He had added that it had all been thanks to her talent. She had smiled and had said that she had been so happy and had mentioned that just then someone she had not even known had told her they were coming to the event. He had responded that it had been awesome. After that, when he had looked outside from the school's window, he had seen a big poster of Rua and a crowd gathered near it. He had thought that Rua had been aggressively promoting her event, and that it looked like a lot of Teikai Academy students would show up. He had concluded that all that had been left was for her to take the bait. The scene had then shifted to the library room where Kazuma and Minato had been practicing. Suddenly, Rua had come in and had said that she had been there again, calling him Kazunya. Kazuma had thought that he had hooked her. When Minato had seen her, she had been shocked and had asked why Rua had been wearing cat ears. Rua had replied aggressively that she had seen Minato's dumb video and had accused her of thinking she had been hot stuff just because she had worn cat ears. She had added that if they had been playing by the same rules, there had been no way someone like Minato could beat her. Rua had declared that the Sunday event would be a cat ear showdown and had promised that she would make sure everyone knew who had been the real cutest and most popular. Kazuma had known she would go there. They had been childhood friends after all, and he had understood how her mind worked. That twitch at the corner of her lips had been a dead giveaway that she had been trying to hold back her frustration. He had thought that now everything had been in place and it had been time for the rebellion against the top idol to begin. On the day of the event, there had been a shine mall where Minato had been getting ready. Kazuma had reached her and had called out to her. She had greeted him in return. He had then asked if it had not been the dressing room and if it had been in the other direction. She had explained that it had been, but Rua had told her manager that she did not want to breathe the same air as that nobody. Kazuma had called her a pig, and Minato had said she would be staying over there. They had been sitting in a storeroom when Kazuma had commented that perhaps this had actually been better, as at least they would not be interrupted now. He had reminded her that showtime had been soon, and had reassured her that as long as she had performed as she always had, she would be fine. He had told her that he had watched her practice every day and that she had improved a lot, urging her to be confident. She had then asked him why he had been going so far for someone like her, admitting that she had been wondering about it the whole time. He had asked in return if she had not thought their school had been a bit too suffocating. She had replied that he had meant the way they had favored scholarship students, and he had confirmed it, adding that while it had happened everywhere, the discrimination at Teikai had been far too obvious. He had explained that if someone like her, who had not been a scholarship student, could shine, it could open a hole in the wall the school had built. She had repeated in surprise that a hole could be opened by her, and he had clarified that this part had been more of an afterthought. At first, he had simply seen how hard she had been trying and had wanted to cheer her on. Feeling emotional, she had said his name, and then he had opened his bag, taken out a pair of cat ears, and had told her that he had made them for her. Minato had asked excitedly if Kazuma had really made them. He had replied that he had, explaining that he had been trying to find something that would suit her best and had figured it would be faster to just make them himself. She had put on the cat ears and had thanked him, saying she had been really happy and would do her best. He had then adjusted the ears for her, telling her that had not been how to wear them, and after patting her head, had shown her the correct way. Seeing her in the cat ears, he had remarked that he had known they would look much better on her. Suddenly, she had noticed his hair and, in shock, had asked him about it. He had explained that he had tried changing his hairstyle once because someone had invited him to karaoke, so he had mustered up the courage to go to a salon. He had said that he had felt like a whole new person, almost as if he had been reborn. He had added that in light novels, that had usually been the point where everyone suddenly saw the character differently, but in his case, people had only pointed and laughed. However, he had told her that Minato Amane had been different, as she had been someone who could truly shine, absolutely, because she had a big dream and had worked so hard to chase it. Just then, someone had knocked on the door and had called for Minato, saying she had been up next. Kazuma had held out his hand to her and had told her to go out there and steal every last one of the pig-faced idol's fans. She had taken his hand and had replied that she would, saying she had been ready to go. It had finally been time for the event. Rua had been on stage, ready with a microphone, and she had announced her thanks to everyone for coming, introducing herself as their idol, Princess Rua. The crowd had cheered loudly, shouting that she had been cute and that even the cat ears had suited her, calling her their Princess Rua. Feeling pleased, Rua had told the audience that it had been the debut event for her new unit, Princess Rua and her cheerful servants, and that she had been going to sing their debut song. She had added that she should probably introduce the members as well. Singing with her that day had been Minato Amane. Minato had come onto the stage, taken a microphone, and introduced herself, speaking slowly and asking everyone to take care of her. The audience had immediately begun talking about her, wondering who she had been, and commenting on how cute she had looked. Rua had felt angry and jealous, thinking to herself what had been going on, that Minato had only lifted her bangs a little. Rua had told herself that when it had come to singing and dancing, she had been the better one. Rua had then announced that it had been time to get started, and had asked everyone to listen to the cutest dreamer. They had begun performing their debut song. As they had sung, the audience had continued to whisper among themselves, asking who Minato had been and remarking that she had been incredibly cute. They had recalled her name and wondered where she had been from. The two had continued their singing battle, but more and more people in the crowd had commented that Minato had seemed far better, saying her voice and dancing had both surpassed Rua's. Some had even told Rua directly in their minds that this had been a total loss for her, and that she had probably thought she could win if it had come down to singing and dancing. However, while Rua had been playing around, Amane had been practicing morning, noon, and after school. Her dancing had already been good, and now she had radiated a captivating level of cuteness. Looking back, Kazuma had realized that the outcome had already been decided long before that day. Out of jealousy for a lowly girl who had gone viral with cat ears, Rua had stepped into Minato's arena, the place where Minato had shown the most. She had done so just as Kazuma once had in the past, entering a field that had not been hers, naive and unprepared. Kazuma had then remarked that it had been starting. In the crowd, while everyone's attention had remained fixed on the stage, he had noticed several men with serious expressions speaking into their earpieces and heading backstage. Kazuma had then tried to catch the men. He had told himself that it had been time to go. At the backstage entry gate, there had been a board stating "No entry. Authorized personnel only." A man had attempted to enter through that gate. He had tried to call his other team members, but no one had answered. Frustrated, he had muttered in irritation, wondering what had been going on and saying he could not get through to any of them either. He had thought that, at the very least, he had to do something before the song ended, and had decided that he would have to drag the girl off stage himself. Suddenly, Kazuma had approached and had asked him whom he had planned to drag off stage exactly. The man had then noticed that his team members had been knocked out behind the stage. Shocked, he had demanded to know who Kazuma had been. Kazuma had told him that he had been one of the Takayashiki family's servants and had guessed that he had been ordered to sabotage Amane if she had not served as a proper foil for Rua. The man had asked how Kazuma had known that. Kazuma had then begun fighting with him, beating him badly. He had told the man that being so careless with his orders had made him second-rate at best, and had wondered aloud if the quality of the Takayashiki family's servants had really fallen so far. When Rua and Minato had been performing on the stage, Kazuma had seen them and had thought that the stage had looked fine for the moment. He had resolved that he would not let anyone ruin Amane-chan's big moment, the one she had worked so hard for. He had also thought that even if someone had tried to ruin it, the people there had already heard her voice and seen her shine on stage, and that her brilliance could no longer be stopped by anyone. Kazuma had then shouted loudly from within the crowd that Amane-chan could do it. Seeing this, Rua had been shocked and angered. Suddenly, during the performance, she had slipped because of her shoes and had fallen to the floor. After that, despite the little mishap of the great Rua Heim taking a spectacular tumble, the event had ended in huge success. The next day, all the big sites had been publishing articles praising Rua, mentioning Rua's fall and Amane-chan's amazing performance as if they had never even happened. Kazuma had thought that it must have been Teikai Music working behind the scenes, as they had been as dirty as ever. However, he had believed that such things could not hide true brilliance, and that in the age of SNS, it would only spread further. When Minato had come to school, everyone had started telling her that they had seen a video of her event, that it had gone super viral, and that the cat ears had looked so good on her. They had added that when she had lifted her bangs, she had looked so cute. Kazuma had thought that he had been happy for her. With Amane-chan becoming this popular, even Rua would find it hard to mess with her now. He had believed that Rua must have been really frustrated about it, especially after making a fool of herself like that, and with the whole thing spreading online. He had thought that even the famous princess would probably want to avoid more scandals. He had known that from then on, people would not leave Amane-chan alone, and that with her talent and dedication, she was only going to get more and more popular. He had also thought that when that happened, someone like him, who had been openly clashing with Takayashiki Rua, would only get in the way since she had ruled the school and had also been the boss at Amane-chan's agency, so he had decided that he would quietly step aside and watch her shine from afar. When Minato had been surrounded by many people, she had still been searching for Kazuma. As Kazuma had tried to move away from the crowd, she had shouted his name, calling out, "Kazuma-kun!" She had then asked everyone to excuse her and let her through. When she had reached him, she had greeted him with a "good morning," and he had replied the same. She had asked him if, after school that day, he could help her practice again. He had responded in surprise, saying that the event had already been over. Minato had explained that she had actually been invited to audition for a new anime and that a different agency had reached out to her. She had told him she had been thinking of changing agencies to one that would give her work as a voice actress, not as an idol. That had been why this time she had wanted to practice acting with him. Kazuma had begun to respond with, "Wait, but Mina-chan?" before trailing off in thought. Suddenly, Minato had placed her finger on his lips and had told him not to call her that, saying she did not like it. She had added that she had wanted only him to call her Aman-nyan. Everyone around them had been watching, and suddenly Rua had appeared, shouting angrily about what Minato had been trying to do to her Kazu. Kazuma had asked Minato if lifting her bangs had somehow changed her personality, and had laughed, saying that maybe it had. Minato had replied that if that had been true, then it had been his fault. She had explained that he had been the one who had lifted her bangs for her, so he had to take responsibility. Saying this, she had hugged him tightly. When Rua had seen that scene, she had been so shocked that she had collapsed to the ground. Someone nearby had exclaimed that Princess Rua had just collapsed and had called for an ambulance. After Amane-chan's event had ended, June had arrived. Since then, Amane-chan had become quite famous between her new gigs and school, and she had seemed super busy every day. What had happened at the school entrance had created a bit of buzz, but Kazuma had somehow been labeled as that shady loner who, for some reason, had been liked by both Rua Heim and Amane-chan. Things had settled down, and his life had been pretty peaceful. Suddenly, Kazuma had heard something from outside the class. Someone had been asking Asano if he had been really serious. Asano had replied that he had been dead serious, and that if he could go on a date with Ayacha, he could die happy. The other person had responded with an, "Ah, right," and then, while sitting on a desk, had told him that he had only been saying that because Ruahim had kept rejecting him. She had reminded him that he had just said the other day that he had been all about Amane-chan and had accused him of acting too desperate just because he had wanted a girlfriend, adding that it had been no wonder he had not gotten one. Another girl had laughed and had remarked that Asapi had been getting called out. Asano had told her to shut up, explaining that he had been saying this because it had been Ayacha. He had described her as seriously gorgeous, with top-tier fashion sense, and even a scholarship student in the school's elite dance program. He had said he had genuinely just wanted to go on a date with the super-hot Ayacha-sama. Ayacha had asked if he could be any more obvious, and then had told him that she already had a boyfriend. Asano had asked in surprise if that had really been true. Another boy had then asked Asano if he had not known, and a girl had confirmed that Ayacha had been dating a college guy. Ayacha had told him to give up, saying that she had just not been interested in guys with no car or cash. Asano had replied that he had money and that he would buy her tea. Ayacha had smiled, shown him her clutch bag, and asked if he had even known what it was. She had explained that it had just come out that month. She had added that she had never asked her boyfriend what it had cost, but guessed that he would need about 1,000 cups of tea to match its price. Then Asano had been shocked and had asked in disbelief if it had really been 1,000, and whether it had all been about money. She had replied that it had been about looks too, and had laughed. Kazuma had thought to himself that they had been what one would call the elite clique made up of scholarship students. They had been free to be loud and obnoxious, but he had wondered if they had even realized they had been sitting in someone else's seat. He had reflected that one of the hidden gems he had returned from the underground, a book she had found in the library and checked out, had now been with her. He had felt glad, thinking it would have been such a waste to let it keep gathering dust in the basement. In his mind, it had been a really good book, and she must have been dying to sit down and read it. After that, Kazuma had gone near Ayacha and had asked her if that had not been her seat, telling her to let the other person have it. She had become angry and had told him not to talk to her as if they had been friends, calling him a gross loner. Kazuma had then told her that the bell had been about to ring and that she should go back to her own seat. Ayacha had replied that it had not rung yet and that she could do whatever she wanted until then. Kazuma had thought that she had been stubborn as ever and had remembered that she had given him the same icy glare back at the karaoke place. He had concluded that Hiragi seemed to hate him and had felt there had been nothing he could do about it. Then, suddenly, he had grabbed her, lifted her, carried her to her seat, and left her there, telling her to go while she still could. Everyone had been shocked to see that. Ayacha had then angrily demanded to know what he had thought he was doing, telling him not to mess with her. She had called him a gloomy loner and Rua's lapdog and had asked if he had thought he could pull something like that and get away with it. Suddenly, Rua had come into the class and had greeted everyone cheerfully, asking what had been going on and wondering if there had been some kind of drama. She had then asked Ayacha if something had happened and whether her Kazu had done something. Ayacha had replied that nothing had really happened. Kazuma had told Rua that he had already said many times that he had not been hers and that they had been just strangers now. Rua had been shocked and had become angry, asking him why he had to be so cruel. She had reminded him that even the other day he had kept sitting with that trash voice actress and had told him that she had cared about him very much. Kazuma had replied that he had already told her before that he stood with those who put in the effort and that he had no intention of supporting a spoiled pig who simply sat on what they had been handed and acted high and mighty. He had thought to himself that he had finally cut ties with Rua and regained his freedom. He had decided that from then on, he would do what he wanted. As a normal high schooler, he had believed that working hard and earning his own money through his own efforts had been something truly noble. That said, it was going to be his first part-time job, so he hadn't been entirely sure what would suit him best. He had noticed that a maid and butler cafe had been hiring, and the pay had been good. Thinking back, he had remembered how, in the middle of middle school, he had been made to live and work at Rua's estate, being told he was to serve the Takayashiki family in the future. The head maid had drilled him in cleaning, serving, and other related skills. Although the cafe had been a bit far, he had thought he might be able to make use of that past experience there. The scene had then shifted to the cafe where Kazuma had gone for his job interview. The lady there had told him that he was hired and that they would get started that weekend. Kazuma had reacted with surprise, but the woman had explained that he had seemed serious and polite, and his manners had been lovely. She had said she had been glad that someone good like him had applied. Since the place had not been very big, she had explained that just the two of them usually handled the floor and that she had been almost always in the kitchen. She had reassured him that he would be working alongside a very dependable senior, someone sweet, kind, and easy to talk to, so he could feel free to ask her anything he needed. Kazuma had thought to himself that a dependable senior sounded promising, and he had hoped she would be a nice person. When he had entered the cafe, he had opened the door and introduced himself, saying he was Suzuki and would be starting work there that day. However, the girl who had heard him had been shocked and had asked in disbelief if the new part-timer starting that day had really been Suzuki, the guy who supported people who worked hard. Inside, there had been a wall filled with pictures. Around that time, Rua had arrived, seen the photographs, and quietly spoken to herself. She had said that she understood Kazu had been testing her love. Then, with a determined smile, she had declared that she would do her best, all for him. Hiragi called it a verse because she couldn't believe she had been hiding from everyone, yet Suzuki still found her. Since he was her junior, she was unwilling to accept it. When Suzuki didn't reply, she wondered why he was suddenly so quiet and if he would say something. She found it ridiculous that she was working in such an outfit and told him he could laugh at her if he wanted. Suzuki wondered why he would laugh at someone who was working so hard. She blushed and explained that it wasn't like that she was only doing it to earn money, and that it was nothing. Suzuki replied that he could see she had really cleaned the area well, mentioning even the spots behind the lights, the fixtures, and the corners of the windows. As she walked away, she said she didn't care and suggested maybe someone else had done it. Suzuki pointed out that her red hands were proof she had been working with water, and her dirty knees showed she had been scrubbing the hard-to-reach places, finishing everything off with mopping, which impressed him. She blushed again, called him annoying, grabbed the sweeper, and told him to hurry up and change into his uniform before opening time since she had a lot to teach him. Suzuki thanked her. Once the cafe opened, Hiragi took an order for a set meal with Neapolitan pasta and mentioned that the iced coffee would come afterward. She apologized to some customers for the crowd, handed them menus to browse, and even handled billing by returning change. Suzuki watched, thinking he was truly surprised because Hiragi was completely different from how she was in the classroom. It wasn't that she was pretending or putting on a front. She genuinely seemed to enjoy herself, looking much livelier and more spirited than at school. He thought he needed to make sure he didn't slow them down. After a while, she became exhausted and was resting since there were no customers. Suzuki commented that it was always like that during lunchtime. She agreed but said it usually calmed down quite a bit from then until the evening. Suzuki then remarked that juggling work with the dance club must be tough. Hiragi admitted it was, but since she was a genius, she found it easy. Then she asked if it was Suzuki's first time working part-time, because his quick movements amazed her. Suzuki felt glad he hadn't gotten in her way. She praised him for being so helpful, but suddenly realized and shouted, asking why they were being friendly when they were supposed to be enemies. As Suzuki wondered what she meant, she explained that since he had broken ties with Rua, it made him their enemy. Suzuki acknowledged that it was true, but clarified it didn't mean he was against her or the others. She refused to listen, insisting he must remember storming out of karaoke and therefore hating them. Suzuki calmly denied it, saying everything had been orchestrated by Rua. Hiragi wondered if Suzuki was talking about Rua. Suzuki confirmed it was indeed Rua's order, and he admitted that he actually admired her now for being both efficient and thorough in her work. He asked if she could continue teaching him. She grew flustered but said she had no choice. She would be strict with him, so he had to be prepared. Suzuki bowed respectfully in agreement. When she told him she had a question, he playfully acted like a butler and told her to go ahead. She mentioned that when the last man had entered earlier, Suzuki had switched places with her, and she wanted to know the reason. Suzuki explained that it was because dishes had been piling up, so he thought she could handle that while he took the easier customer service role. Hiragi immediately called him a liar, saying he wasn't the type to do that without reason. Suzuki then revealed that the customer had been there specifically for her. He explained that the man had been secretly taking photos, fiddling suspiciously with his bag, and giving her odd looks. Hiragi was shocked and asked if Suzuki had noticed all that just by observing him. She admitted he was amazing for realizing it. Suzuki wondered if the man was a regular offender, and Hiragi admitted there had been a few suspicious moments before. Suzuki asked why she hadn't kicked him out, questioning where all her boldness from school had gone. She argued that he was still a customer, and she couldn't simply confront him. Suzuki remarked on how serious she was and told her that the next time that customer came, she should inform him so he could take over. Flustered, she thanked him, saying he was really kind. Just then, the bell rang, signaling a new customer. Hiragi went to welcome them and found that it was Minato, who waved at Suzuki and said she had heard about his new part-time job and came to see him in person. Noticing Hiragi, Minato remarked that her face seemed familiar. Suzuki immediately realized this was bad, while Hiragi froze completely, clearly unwilling for anyone from school to find out. Suzuki quickly told Minato that it must just be her imagination, then asked Hiragi to take her break. She agreed and left. After that, Suzuki served cream soda to Minato, who thanked him and said the place was really lovely. She explained that she had a big job coming up that day, but had asked her manager for time off so she could recharge by seeing him. As she took a bite of the cream soda, she found it delicious, and seeing Suzuki in a tuxedo made her feel even happier. Suzuki was glad to see her in such good spirits, and he noted that her voice acting career seemed to be going well. She told him that thanks to everyone's support, she had secured 3 regular roles. Suzuki congratulated her for that. Hiragi then asked whether Rua had come by. Suzuki replied that he hadn't told Rua about his job. Minato said that was good, mentioning that Rua had taken a 2-week break, which was rare for someone so popular. She suspected Rua might be up to something strange and warned Suzuki to be careful. He agreed and thanked her. Checking the time, Minato said she was already running late, but before leaving, she wished him well and even hugged him. Suzuki was confused by the gesture, and Hiragi commented that Minato now seemed fully recharged and at her maximum power. Minato left after thanking Suzuki for the treat. Suzuki realized that Minato truly seemed brighter now, as though freed from Rua and her former agency. It felt as if she had found her real self again, but then he recalled Minato's warning that Rua might be planning something. From behind, Hiragi had been watching everything, wondering about the relationship between Suzuki and Minato. She was certain Minato was the rising voice actress who had recently gained popularity, and she remembered hearing rumors about her being close to Suzuki. Hiragi thought the rumors were false, but seeing how close they looked made her uncertain. Still, she was relieved that Suzuki hadn't told Minato about Misha's job, and she thought he really was a good guy.